another run of Subnautica done by rivukis, and I think you've already been waiting for this one because we also have a donation incentive tied to this particular run. So if you want to go ahead and see rivukis actually go ahead and bring back the toys, well, we still need a little bit of money to be able to do that. So, get those donations going. We still have about until 1 hour into the run to get that donation incentive met. So go ahead and donate. And with that, rivukis, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is rivukis. You'll hear me a little bit throughout the run. I'm mostly going to hand it off over to my commentator because parts of this game require a lot of thinking and tracking. So I'm going to, luckily he's been very happy to help out, which I really, really appreciate. So AJ, if you want to take it from here.
Yeah, I'm AJ Chimera. I also have run this game across multiple different categories, so I can help to fill in some of the gaps, and I'll also explain a bit about the differences with this being a glitchless run. There's a lot of glitches that we use in other categories. Yeah, but I'll walk you through the first 20 or more minutes while rivukis is kind of concentrating really hard on inventory management, and we'll take it from there. When we're ready. Want to do a countdown? Or I can do the countdown?
Yeah, if you don't mind counting me down.
Okay, so get going in 3, 2, 1, and go. So the first important thing to clarify in this is spawn locations where your life podders are technically random within an area. rivukis has got a save game that we're operating on here just for the sake of marathon consistency more than anything. Otherwise, resetting for a good spawn is one of the biggest things you do once you're grinding this game down. You get to learn the early game map really well after a while. There's just one sort of zone that is really good. You can do competitive runs pretty much anywhere that you spawn. You're just kind of automatically taking a bit of a time hit when you do. There is one other bit of RNG that influences your overall time much more in this particular category that we'll get into a bit later. Just grabbing some basic resources back there and building a scanner, because that's a very, very important component for this game. And right at the start here, we're wanting to get a bunch of resources to make our basic tools and accessories, and we're going to end up with something that'll make us go a lot faster. And so kind of skimming through, not grabbing literally everything, because we're going to come back with better speed later. So it's finding that balance between grabbing things while you're there versus leaving things until they're going to be more advantageous to get later. Coming over to the kelp forest and grabbing some stuff here. Oxygen is a very precious resource this early in the game because you don't have any oxygen tanks or anything like that to help fortify you. So you've got to be careful you don't get too distracted. At least it's not hardcore, where the latest version they removed the oxygen warnings, so you don't even know that you're drowning. Gets a bit hairy sometimes. So over here looking for some sea glide fragments. There's these little boxes at these wrecks, and you need 2 of them to get a full sea glide. Unfortunately, they're not a guaranteed thing to find, so I might be able to go to a backup. It wasn't within the load range of the kind of saved state. They are possible to find anywhere in the shallows, but it's only like 2% per spawn node. At the wreck, it's more like 10% per spawn node, so it's a bit more guaranteed. But again, this is just the RNG part of the game really showing into it. There was a GDQ run that another runner did, Selvner, I think it was. I think it was his GDQ run, it might have been his ESA run, that he had to go to like multiple backups for sea glides. So it gets a bit rough. We'll see how we go. There we go. Lucky box. Also, I'm probably on a bit of a delay because I'm the other side of the world, but hopefully I'm reasonably live. So this is the most crucial part of the start of the run. So first hurdle. Overcome. And the next bit is going to be crafting resources and gathering some more now that we've got a bit more speed under our belt with that. And that's to be able to build a base, which is one of the most enjoyable parts of this game as a casual play, is building a nice big sea base. We only need a little one in this one, but very crucial, because you notice the power up the top in the life pod here is ticking away pretty quickly, and we've got a lot of stuff that we need to make. The power regenerates in the life pod constantly, but at a very slow rate. You only get like 3 power every 5 to 10 seconds or something like that. It's pretty slow, and there's no way to upgrade it. You can repair the life pod, but it doesn't make any difference to the power generation, unfortunately. So we really need to get cracking before the sun goes down, preferably, because we're going to be putting together a base with some solar panels on top, so that we can make all of the electronics and other good things that we need. That's one of the biggest differences between glitchless and a glitched run. In the glitched run, we make use of a duplication glitch, which cuts down quite significantly on the amount of crafting that you need to do. You still do need the solar panels, and 2 of them at that, but yeah, you don't need to worry quite so much about making lots of titanium ingots, which take significant amounts of crafting, and lots of glass, which in this it can be a problem. Just finding enough quartz for the run to be able to turn into the glass can be really annoying, so we try and minimize the amount that we need as much as possible. Coming in here, you've already seen some of the crash fish, which are the hardcore players' worst nightmare, and casual players' first kind of introduction to hostile things in the game. There's another one. They're relatively harmless. They're quite easy to dodge if you go sideways, but the worst part is if you're over a patch of those purple acid mushrooms when one of them kind of explodes, that can completely insta-kill you. It could take you from 100 to 0, which ends your hardcore run very quickly. So they're able to make the habitat builder from all of that collection. Some computer chips and such. Metal salvage is something that's quite at a premium in the run as well. Want to make sure that we've got a fair amount early on. Not going to be able to take everything with us from the life pod storage, but we do get the option to come back here later. Important thing is just having the basic materials we need to be able to put the base together. Base placement's kind of different between different runners. There's a few good places that you can put them. It's kind of a trade-off between good early game versus good late game. It's one of the things with this run and with this game in general is you've got to bear in mind that like your sum of best, for example, is fairly meaningless a lot of the time because there's some things that are quite transferable. You can do extra resource collection right at the end, you can front load it, which we tend to do. It's usually nicer just to make sure that you've got everything built that you know that you need, so then when it gets to the end of the game you're just in go mode. But you can just as easily do it the other way around and just kind of front load some of the movement aspects of it instead and leave a lot of the collection and crafting until later. A lot of it is you're just trying to maximize your day-night cycle. It's much easier to see things during the daytime, obviously, especially in some of the caves. So there's our base setup. We've got our fabricators now. We've got the solar panels. You can see it ticking up much quicker than what we had in the base. Be able to get up to max and, yeah, be on our merry way. Make a couple of storage lockers. We're going to need a lot of stuff. Yeah, a lot of this first section is just collecting a lot of materials and doing a lot of crafting. There's a lot to have to keep in mind. You got to have pretty good notes for this, or a really good memory. The memory bit is where I fall over a lot of the time, so having good notes is crucial. Just let you know what you need, but the randomness of it, like all of these resources, none of these are in the same place every single time. So you can be thrown into a bit of a loop where you expect to be able to make certain things, so you do really have to be quite adaptable in this case. Okay, I couldn't get enough stuff at this point on this particular collection leg. That means that I can only make these things. I'm going to then have to pick it up and do a different sort of crafting strategy, which can be really difficult. When you're learning, the best thing to do is just stick with it, and yeah, you'll take a little bit of extra time to just find what you want at certain points, but as you get more accustomed to the run, you can start to adapt a little bit more. Once you learn where other things are and alternative places to go if you find yourself a little bit short, that geyser section there, and the caves underneath it are really good, which is why this base placement is really good for the early game. It's also quite good for the late game. There's certain positioning is quite important later on. It's a pretty good compromise. It's upgrading our oxygen tank so we can spend even more time underwater. Because once we start going deep, we don't really want to have to take the time to go up and get air all the time. And we're going further and further away from our base with every loop pretty much that we do. And eventually we're going to be leaving it behind for quite a long time. Got the table coral there. This is on the more recent version of the game, so table coral kind of explodes into a million pieces. It used to be you just swiped it once, and you just had a single chunk that came off, made it a little bit easier to pick up, but for some reason they decided that there wasn't enough, and made it so that you get tons of it. There was a change that was originally brought into Below Zero, the sequel to the game, because there's less of the table coral nodes. But then they changed it back in that game, so it's now what it used to be, but they never changed it back in this one. It's kind of amusing. Mobile vehicle fragment there is really good. You need 3 of those, and they can be really annoying to find later. Ooh, tooth. There we go. So we're going to explain a bit about the teeth now, because that's becoming relevant. Those stalkers we like to call dogs because they play fetch with the metal salvage that lies around, and there is a chance, there is a 25% chance every time they pick up a piece of metal that they drop a tooth. And bizarrely, they decided to make it that the teeth is something you need in this game to make enameled glass. It's an odd decision. In BZ, you just need a diamond and a lead, I think, which is much easier. But in this, you need to rely on that random chance. 25% seems like a lot until you get like 20 pickups in a row and they don't drop a single tooth. As is always the way in such games. We need 4 of them in this particular run. There's other categories that require even more. In the glitched run, rather, it's kind of a hard reset point that you need all 4 of them by like 8 minutes. In Glitchless, it's a little bit more forgiving because we're coming and going from our base a lot more. And while the stalkers are within render range, they can still be picking up metal and dropping teeth, even though we're not there to see it. And then you just come back and just pick up after them later, which is, yeah, really good. I didn't actually see rivukis as the radiation warning hit yet.
It must have, because
yeah,
it was the save is for really early. It's like 3:20 or something. Like it's really early.
Right. Yeah. So I was talking and missed it. So there's an important point that that would have come up. There was a PDA message that would have said that there's a radiation detected from the Aurora. That's the ship that we came in on and crashed. The radiation warning is extremely crucial for this run. That's a big reset point that you get to. Basically, in the glitchless run, we need to be able to access the interior of the Aurora naturally. So we have to just go in after it explodes later on, spoilers, from the radiation warning. That's how you can actually get inside. Oh, there's all the teeth we need. That's fantastic. So yeah, you get a warning at 20% of the time that it's going to explode, and it's random between 46 minutes and like an hour 20. And then the 20% point is 9 minutes, 12, and 16 minutes. Obviously, once you're at a point where you're capable of doing a run in under an hour, if you get a 16-minute radiation warning, you just cannot finish the game in less than that amount of time. So you just have to reset. It's a really painful thing when you're grinding this game. And of course, once you get down to like world record levels, where it's practically, it's at 50-something minutes or something now. It's pretty insane. Someone was really grinding at it for a while and got it really low. It's almost getting to the point that the radiation warning is almost insurmountable. There's a few strategies we have in mind that if it gets to that point, we can mitigate it a little bit, that we can start doing certain things before the ship explodes to try and minimize the amount of stuff that you have to do after that point. But it's starting to get pretty tight. Obviously, in the glitched run, you make use of an out-of-bounds area that you can just slide into before the aurora explodes, and you go there and back again within the first 20 minutes of the game, and don't have to worry about it at all. That's one of the big differences in the routing between the two categories. So now filling out all of the sandstone we need for electronics. There's a lot of counting and concentrating at this point. One, the sandstone is really hard to see sometimes against those cave walls, and you need quite a lot of it, especially in Glitchless, because we do need a few extra materials to be able to gain access to the aurora naturally. There is a resource loop that they go through. It's kind of a grab bag sort of system that every 8 nodes of sandstone you break, it kind of resets the cycle, so you're always getting 3 silver, 3 lead, and 2 gold. And other than the lead, which we don't really need that as much of, the other quantities actually work out quite well proportionally. We do need a little bit more gold than what we'll get here, but you can also get gold from shale nodes that we'll come across later. But it does mean that you can, instead of having to keep track of exactly how many things you've gotten, you can actually just count out the number of nodes that you've broken. Laser cutter here is really good. That's one of the required blueprints we'll need later, and getting a bonus one here is really nice. Fragment RNG is next to resource RNG. The worst part of having to run this game is finding the right number of fragments that you need to get the required tools. We do what we can to maximize it, but yeah, sometimes the game just says no. Kind of like with the Sea Glide at the start. That's a pretty good example of how sometimes the game just says, you know what, well, I'm going to make life hard for you today.
While we are swimming around collecting those resources, mind if I butt in with a donation real quick?
Absolutely, go for it.
Because we have a massive $100 donation by PhD Mesh Ultra, who says, here because of rivukis. And of course, that money goes towards the Collect the Toys incentive. So it looks like we're actually going to do that at the end of the run. Thank you so much for your donation.
Let's smash that one out of the park. We should have made it $500.
Absolutely. And seeing how this goes, could probably met that.
Yeah,
Speaking of keep your donations coming, everybody, we are still quite a ways away from our donation goal for this marathon, and we absolutely have some wonderful prizes for you to win. More on that a little bit later, but so far you're doing pretty good, but we can do better as we are on the last couple runs of the marathon, though. Keep those donations coming.
Yeah, it always ramps up near the end, doesn't it? But you don't want to be too late, especially if you want to get in on prizes. That's great. That's a nice big dono there. Yeah, and to a really good cause as well. I was reading up about the children's charity that's a Caldwell Children's that's supporting. It's a really good one. Yeah, this is a bit of a kind of easy section of the run of just crafting, going through all of the resources. So yeah, got a bit more time for if there's donations or talking about the charity. Be good. I was really hoping.
Absolutely do that.
Yeah, good. Yeah, go for it. Yeah,
just had to follow the tracker there for just a moment there. But of course, as you just said, we are supporting Caldwell Children. If you guys don't know what that is, well, Caldwell Children provide practical and emotional support for disabled children and their families across the United Kingdom. With your support, they provide services and equipment to children who need them, including powered wheelchairs, therapy tricycles, and car seats, as well as sports equipment for talented disabled athletes. They have also started their own brand new, first of its kind, in-house autism service from Caldwell International Children's Centre in Staffordshire, UK. Visit the website at www.caldwellchildren.org to learn more about their amazing program.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, it's a great sounding charity. It's something that's quite dear to me. I'm not in the UK, I'm in New Zealand. We're lucky with our health service, but my daughter has significant disabilities. She's actually in the hospital at the moment. And yeah, we've had a huge amount of support from various organisations over here. So it's really good that something like that exists over in the UK, because it's tough. And no matter what level of disability, it's always really difficult, and just getting that extra support is so important, especially for things like the mobility, vehicles and accessories and wheelchairs. Becomes very important. Yeah, so we've made it to a different biome now. We're now in the red grasses. So this little bit here, as we're slipping through the girders there to get in and out of that wreck, it's a bit of a interesting trick. It's kind of out of bounds-ish, but you're just slipping through a gap in the collision in order to still go to a part of the wreck that you normally can access. You just normally need the laser cutter. So we've determined that it's more of a sequence break than anything else. So we allow it in the glitchless category because it just helps to smooth out the consistency of the run. Being able to get into that lower part of the wreck, you're much more able to find the fragments that you need. Interestingly, that gap closes up after the aurora explodes, which is kind of weird that something so far away would be affected by that, but everything kind of shifts a little bit, it seems. It's an interesting little vagary. But it's really handy that we found that, because otherwise you'd kind of comb into that wreck and you could only access the top of it, because you need the laser cutter to get to the bottom part of the wreck, but you only get the laser cutter blueprints from that wreck, or from the area around it. And you don't have any of the diamonds that you need to even craft one until later in the run. So it's became a bit of a catch-22 that you just had to find it, must find it at that point. And also the propulsion cannon as well, which becomes useful for one singular spot later in the run, but again becomes a must-have. There is an alternative technically to using the propulsion cannon, but it's slower, so we prefer to do things fast. So fighting our way through this cave system here, gonna pick up a fancy glowing little purple tablet that will rub on our face as we swim along. Used to actually go out of the cave again, but it was found that there's a nice little cave up here that we can run through onto the top of the island, which is quite nice. It's another big difference between the glitched category and the glitchless category. In the glitched category, we make use of a speed boost, but it only remains in effect for so long as you remain underwater. So you have a real hard restriction on you can't come out of the water, you can't enter a base that isn't flooded and things like that. So in the glitchless one, you just have a bit more freedom to be able to just run about and grab these things, which is just as well. Oh, another engine fragment in, that's handy. These Cyclops engine fragments are another thing we need. We need to make the Cyclops, the big ship, for one particular reason later in the run. Getting the fragments early is not like hugely important, but it can help if you get all three of them before a certain point coming up soon. Then it just saves a lot of travel time, which is quite handy. Inventory management here is really tight, having to juggle all these really useful resources that we're passing and just having to ignore, because until we come over here and set up our base, we just don't have room to pick more things up. So we have to do a little bit of backtracking. But those caves are just rich with materials. And now that we're able to build our base, we can start getting things out of our inventory. And be careful of the warpers that's lurking above us there. Say hi to Boris. That's one of the most annoying NPCs in the game. There's a bunch of them that all just swarm around, and it's at this point, once you get to this point, you kind of set off a trigger that makes them want to come after you. And that's, really frustrating, especially in glitchless, since you're going much slower. In hardcore especially, your health is at so much more of a premium because you can't just take a death to reset it. So, yeah. In the no damage run in particular, they're really annoying. There's also these little biters that run around that just little bits of chip damage can all add up sometimes, even in this run. So you can at least reset our health and food and everything by taking a death, even if it's not 100% planned. You can just do it for safety, but we'd really rather not have to. So we make this locker here so we can put some stuff away, so we're reducing the amount of things that we're carrying around. Because again, inventory very tight. Oh, there's another engine fragment. Perfect. So don't have to go down to the wreck. I think it's at number 3. Yeah, shortcut time. Still need a lot of resources though.
Mind if I butt in for a second?
Go for it.
Because we have 2 more donations coming in. One from Brian supporters with no comment, but $50 donated to the cause. So thank you so much for your donation. And more importantly for rivukis here, we have another massive $100 donation from Lisa saying, "Thank you for donating your time to help the children. rivukis for the win." And that goes toward the achievement challenge run of the run that is coming up after this one, and that actually got met. So we will actually see this achievement challenge run of Lifeslide in just a little bit. So thank you all so much for donating towards that, because we definitely need to get that met as we are on the last leg of Indiethon Fall Follies 2022 here.
Fantastic. Gonna need more incentives.
I guess so. I mean, we still have another one after that, but we are starting to run out of time, out of runs, and out of incentives. So, yeah, maybe we should open up a couple more.
We need some bonus runs. So we're getting
So
some...
we have to go ahead and contact the organizers.
Yeah. Getting some plant materials here. It's these bulb bushes, which we do actually need later, but they're also really good for just stocking up on our water supply. Yeah, stay hydrated, everyone. It's important in a game where you're swimming in salt water to find ways that you can keep yourself hydrated. We also passed underneath a Reaper Leviathan back there, which is probably the casual player's most dreaded thing in the game. So we kind of hate warpers more because we see them a lot more, but the Reaper Leviathans can really wreck your day if you're not careful. Especially given that we're not able to use that speed glitch I mentioned before, which makes you go like 2.5 times speed. Means we are actually able to be caught by them. Generally, as long as your movement is pretty consistent and you just keep in a good straight line, you don't need to worry about them too much. They're not actually that fast, they're just really agile.
Their aim is pretty terrible too. As long as you keep running, their aim is pretty terrible. So as long as you keep running, you're fine. It's when you stop. Also, when you're in a vehicle, that's when they're the worst.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Though in the Seamoth, if you triplane your Seamoth, if you move in multiple axes at once, you actually go 19 meters a second. It's the second fastest consistent movement in the game, and then they can't catch you, so that's always handy. I think a sea dragon would still catch you.
Yeah.
But you're under the depth of a Seamoth at that point anyway, so it's only relevant to creative, and they ignore you in creative, which is handy.
Yeah, the dragons are the worst, and they're yet to come.
Oh yeah, we're gonna see some nasties soon. Yeah, the warpers are bad, but they've got nothing on the sea dragons. So we've got a nice big long illuminated channel down here. This is known as the Lost River section. It's really pretty in an eerie sort of way. It's also unfortunately very empty. So if we had any more donations, that would be a good time.
Well, you are in luck, because we just received another $3 from Kay, saying here's 1.7% of a peer bonus. Thank you so much for the donation.
Nice. Every little bit helps.
I think that might have been a good message for
Absolutely.
me.
I mean, we are creeping so much closer to our goal of $1,000 raised for Caldwell children. So, you know, we have about 5 or 6 more runs coming in after that. So the marathon is coming to a close. So use that time to absolutely make sure that the donations get it.
Absolutely. And even if we hit it, you know, stretch goals. Set a new record to be beaten next time.
So much more planned after that.
Excellent. That's good. So now we're coming out of the Lost River and descending into the lava zones. This is where it starts getting... Things start to heat up, you could say. Went underneath the ghost Leviathan that we call Casper. Always nice to get a Casper bless. So we're looking for nickel now. So nickel is a tiny little potato that hides, and you need 3 of them, and it's really hard to see them against the heat effect, the bubbles, the fish, all of that. It's, yeah, this is one of the worst parts of the run, because you're kind of on a bit of a timer, because you've got oxygen and also your health to worry about. We do have the ability to just build a safety base, at least, to kind of reset in if we need to reset our oxygen and our health. That's not an option you have in the hardcore run. This is the absolute tensest part of a hardcore run. This and the next couple of minutes afterwards. That's 2 out of 3. That's good. So it's just, so hard to see, and things don't load in consistently otherwise as well, so you'll notice Rivukis is kind of looking around quite a bit because you might have actually passed over a bit and then the resources load in. It's a little bit weird sometimes, but sometimes you have to go out onto this plateau. Yep. And
speaking of resources for a moment just here, I think Rivukis is not only bringing back a lot of resources to his base, he's also bringing a lot of resources to this marathon, because we have another $40 donation by Valderit saying LGTM, which probably means something along the lines of let's get this money. So thank you so much for your donation as well.
Well, looks good to me is usually the
that's the one.
Yeah, that's usually what you put on a PR when you're approving it in software languages. So yeah,
let's just go with the other menu because we need more money.
Let's get that money. Definitely.
I mean, apparently it worked, because we have another $10.24 donation by K once again saying the ants sent their regards.
So we're looking for one more nickel. This is always an awkward part. And I noticed we almost got sniped by a warper before as well. Building that safety base, there was a big kind of purple zoink sort of ball that's the warper trying to teleport you to be able to grab you. Or sometimes they'll teleport other things to you to attack you. They're really nasty. And thankfully we didn't get hit by that, or the sea dragon lobbing fireballs at us, which also can happen. There's been times when I've just been setting up the safety base and then I get smacked and have to go all the way back to the mountain. But we got lucky. Now we're looking for some other awkward resources. There's a kyanite here, late game resource that we need 6 of in this run. We must have 2 after this point, so we've got those, which is good. In fact, we've got twice as many as we need, which is even better, because it means we can stash some into our locker when we get back to base. And then we've got this alien structure here. You do have to be a little bit careful around some of those pipes. There's the water-air barrier actually sticks out slightly from the structure itself. So if you're not careful, you can swim by trying to cut the corner, like when you're running out of oxygen and really trying to get to the base. And then suddenly you find yourself with no water to swim in anymore, and that ruins your run. Because then you will take a death all the way back to your last base, or your run ends in a hardcore run. So, yeah, little things we have to worry about in this game sometimes. But here we're going inside and grabbing some blueprints. Some parkour here, just to get some cleaner lines, get some blueprints, get this ion cube that's going to be useful in just a moment. And taking advantage of some of the rather convenient transport options we have available to us. So there's these nice big green Stargate portals that go exactly where we need to go. It's almost like the developers planned it. It's almost made for speedrunning, except for the fact that they take a very long time to get through the portals, etc.
It's a little trick I learned. You can actually open up while you're teleporting, so if you want to count your stuff while you're teleporting, you can.
You can technically, yeah, which I think we've determined is not technically a glitch, because as you say, you can just do it. Like the game is not paused or anything in those places. It's one of the kind of awkward points where in the creative categories we actually remove the portal loading times from the timer, so we end up with an in-game time versus the real time, and that's simply because that in creative there's nothing that goes on in those portals that's relevant to the run. In other game modes, there's actually kind of background times, like the radiation timer, for example, and other such things. They're actually still going even the whole time that you're in one of those portals. So it's not a true loading time, so it means we unfortunately can't really remove them, even though the time you spend in those sections is inconsistent based on your hardware. So it's unfortunate, to say the least, especially on console, like last-gen consoles, PS4 and such. Those times take forever. But it's only creative where we can actually remove them for fairness. the latest patch of the game, this version of the game, is much better. The load times are much more consistent and much quicker. And current generation consoles load much quicker. They're practically on pace with PC now, which is really good. The game was a bit ahead of its time in some respects in terms of the demands that it was putting on some hardware. It's not quite the crisis of games, but it gets close sometimes. So we just did a quick there and back again to our base. We needed to make a second of the blue tablets that we picked up. It's kind of one of those things that, as with most speedruns, we know what we need ahead of time. In the casual gameplay, you'd pick up that one blue tablet and then go, oh, this is cool, this is neat. And if you're lucky, you'll remember to actually have it on your person when you get to a later point in the run. If you're unlucky, then you've left it in a locker somewhere and you have to do a lot of extra traveling. But in this, we just know that we need it. And we can just make a second one because we need to, and then we can just keep going. So we've got the rest of the software we needed as well. Did we still need one nickel as well, I think? Which is a 10.
Yeah, I still need one more nickel. Got everything else, I think.
It's always the nickel. Can be at any
Speaking of
point
needing more things,
yes.
if I might have to, disrupt your commentary once more because we just keep getting more donations over here. We have another $10 from Jotaro Kujo, who says, and come on everybody, say that with me. Ora, 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 ora. And then we also have another $20.48 once again by Kay, saying 777 quintillion, 777 quadrillion, 777 trillion, 777 billion, 777 million, 777,000, and 777. That were a lot of sevens. Strangely enough, there was actually no 7 in that donation amount, but I'll take it anyway. And one more from Dio Brando with $11, saying better than Jotaro Kujo. I guess that was met. And yeah, everybody, thank you so much for your donation. It's actually staggering how many donations have come in during this single run. Keep them coming. Keep pushing towards that $1,000 mark.
Thank you very much for those donations, yeah. Now we've got the tensest part of the run here. We just went underneath the Sea Dragon. They can be really nasty, and they move really quickly and can turn faster than you'd expect for their speed. Sometimes you never see them. You get really lucky runs sometimes that they just float off into a wall or something and you don't have to worry about them. This time that was looking really tense for a moment there, but thankfully they decided not to lob a fireball, because one of their attacks actually has an area of effect, so you're kind of skimming the ground trying to keep away from them, and then they just happen to hit something near you and you die anyway. So, but that is the kind of the only real massively dangerous part of the run done, because it kind of sets you back a little bit in progress. Obviously we had the safety base set up just in case. That kind of messes with your health a bit, which you'll notice we're on kind of less than 25% health. That is actually relevant later. We make a use of low health to be able to trigger a death warp later. So when they do set you back, it kind of messes with that a little bit. It's just an annoyance. Obviously in a hardcore run, that's just instant game over, which is really annoying when you've already spent half an hour in a run. Now we're saying hello to the Big Mama, who's going to hold us here for a little bit. There's a specific voice line and this invisible wall just goes away. And here we go. She's just plot, don't worry about it. It's a very kind of interesting and touching sort of sequence when you're playing casually, so I don't want to spoil too much of it. Those who've played the game know Big Mama quite well. Yeah, would definitely recommend playing it for the story as well and just taking your time through it. Even in a speedrun, like this being a glitchless speedrun means that we're not kind of zipping out of bounds quite as much. You do get to appreciate a little bit more of it. There's an all achievements category as well, which is quite good because you do then see some of the extra kind of side story beats as well. And you get to play with a cuttlefish, so there's that. Yeah, in this one we're just kind of skipping through, interacting with a few things that, yeah, don't worry about it. Just making it so that we can leave the planet.
Environment scans indicate the water here is rich with a rare plankton-like life form, which depends on the organic detritus produced by the ecosystem.
Trying to move upwards nice and quickly to trigger a bit of a movement. Get there from the Emperor. Didn't get it, unfortunately. Yeah, it's not consistent. So we just got to wait for her to kind of sit around and power pose impressively and eventually come over here to grace us with her presence and blow the sand away from the portal that we're trying to get through. You'd think she'd be in a bit more of a hurry.
They could not hear me.
So it blows the sand away. As soon as she starts the blowing animation, the collision on the sand disappears, so we can immediately interact with that pedestal. It's one of those things that people go, oh, they glitched something. It's like, technically not. The collision just disappears. Allows us to just move straight in, get the animation started for opening the portal, move through, and head back to the base that we prepared earlier. You'll notice that that's really conveniently located. That, hang on, we're back at the mountain. So it's almost like they planned it.
With the passage you've opened,
We have a very apt donation for that, because Volchi donates $15 saying, give Big Mama a hug for me. And I think we kind of did that just now, didn't we?
Yeah, we gave her a nose boot. Yep. She's a bit big to hug. But,
I give the secret.
Once again, thank you so much for your donation here. And just as an aside, while I am on air here, we have one last donation incentive for you guys to meet. Or rather, it's not a donation incentive, it's actually a bid war for our Phasmophobia run, coming up the run after this one. And you can choose which of the new update maps will be played. This can either be the Camp Woodwind or the Sunny Meadows Restricted. At the moment, Sunny Meadows Restricted is in the lead by about $50 over Camp Woodwind. So if you want to go to the camp, you know, go ahead and make sure that if you donate to the marathon or to the charity here, that you actually put your money towards that incentive if you want to, you know, have Camp Westwood win. Woodwind, sorry.
that sounds very achievable. Yeah, let's go camp. Yeah. let's strike up some competition.
There's a few risky.
I mean, we've seen so much water during this run, you know, like a nice foresty camp would probably be nice in the scenery.
Exactly. Yeah, let's go plant the trees instead.
There's a few risky things I like to do when I'm normally running. I'm going to attempt them now, but I'm going to save it just in case I mess it up, because if you mess it up, I could actually ruin the entire run. So I don't want that to happen. Yeah, hopefully that goes well.
I'm sure it'll be.
Yeah.
Things would never go wrong in a marathon run.
I mean, that is where the good luck happens, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, doing some of these little jumps there. Oh, nicely done.
Okay,
yeah, that's the dangerous part done. Yep. Obviously, with our health, we're wanting to trigger a death warp by jumping off those ramps a little bit later. If you mess up one of those jumps, you can do it a little bit early, and that's really, really bad, because you go a long way away when that happens. But that was some good movement there.
The first one was a little bit safer just because the fall isn't as far. It's actually based on velocity, but so you may actually survive. It'll just cost you some time, which is why a lot of runners don't do it. But the taller one is high enough that if your health is too low, you'll actually death warp back too early, and it basically ruins the entire run, because it's going to cost you at least 10 minutes probably to make up.
Yeah, it wastes you the time from falling and from swimming all the way back, so just adding insult to injury. Yeah, even in creative where you don't take fall damage, I don't tend to do those jumps simply because, yeah, if you miss one, you might save a second, but you'll waste 10 if you miss it, and the margins are so tight. I'm not going to waste 12 minutes of the rest of the run just for that. So you can see that we're back at the life pod now. So by deconstructing the hatch on the last base that you were inside, which was that little base that we had at the mountain there, if you then die after that point, the game can't figure out where you were meant to be. So as a safety mechanism, it puts you all the way back at the life pod, which is fantastic for us, because at that point we were about 1,000 meters away from it. So that's a lot of swimming that we just didn't have to do. And you keep all of your materials when you die in an alien base like that. And normally your inventory gets saved when you leave a base anyway. So you leave a base, you deconstruct the hatch, you may lose the hatch materials, but everything else that you had on you is saved, and you'll end up back at your life pod. It's a nice little peace of mind thing that is really useful, even casually, just having that peace of mind that, okay, I was in a base, I'm safe. And now we've got a lot more swimming to do. So dropped off a bunch of stuff, heading off to another part of the map where, yeah, you guessed it, we'll be death warping back again, so we have to swim twice. Getting some more metal salvage because we still need a lot of metal. Funnily enough, building big submersibles and larger structures takes a lot of materials. So honestly, the amount that you need is kind of almost not proportional to what you'd expect by the size of things, but they did trim it down for kind of nice sake. I've actually played a mod of this game where it's called Custom Craft and allows you to set things as you like. And I worked up a preset that it makes things so much more difficult. Like, you'll need a full inventory's worth of stuff to make any of the vehicles. It just kind of, it's like playing it on hard mode almost.
Yeah, this is
speedrunning that would take a very long time.
This is one section of the run that I'm actually a little bit more proud of because I actually was able to make some improvements to the run. I say that with confidence. The rest of this run, most of it I shamelessly stole from World Record and the top like 5 attempts. But this is the one piece I feel like I actually improved, and so that was kind of cool.
It's one.
There you go. So you'll notice earlier, well, maybe you didn't, I actually dropped my knife. Before you normally needed that, so you could die by cutting mushrooms out here. But I found a way that you can drown yourself and you can control it by swapping tanks. So I have 2 tanks right now. I'll have one of them empty at one point, and what I'll do is I'll switch to an empty one so that I can make sure and die at the appropriate time. I don't know if I explained that very well. AJ, if you want to go a little deeper on that.
No, that's about right, yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where the run overall, like, it's pretty well refined. So we've got a few people who've grinded it down pretty well, but there's still some efficiencies to be gained for sure. Like, it's one of those things that you kind of tunnel vision on the thing that you're just trying to grind because you've practiced it so well. Sometimes a fresh pair of eyes just helps to really open it up even further. And yeah, I was playing around with a few ways to make some efficiencies here, but I hadn't even thought of the idea of using an empty tank to just kind of trigger a death. Essentially, it's quite handy. Nice. Because you have a little bit of time after you completely run out of oxygen. Your screen starts to fade out, but you don't actually have the death until 8 seconds after you hit 0. So that allows us to kind of get to 0, exhaust our personal oxygen supply, have an empty tank available, and then swap to that tank at the point that we want to, take the death ball, essentially. And we have 8 seconds to deconstruct the hatch in order to trigger the death ball. It is quite dangerous because if you do not trigger, like if you don't fully deconstruct the hatch, when you die you'll actually respawn inside the base with a mostly deconstructed hatch. And if you're not careful, if you didn't keep all of your materials, then you can't reconstruct it to get out, and then you just have to wait to die of natural causes, basically. And it wastes a lot of time. But the timing works out really well that you have just enough time to be able to do that. And if you notice that you're cutting it close, you can swap back to the full tank if you really need to, or other strategies to be able to make sure that you don't have problems there. The screen was shaking just before. That was the Aurora exploding, so that's the relevant bit that we were talking about quite some time ago, where we needed that to explode in order to be able to access the interior of it. So it's really good that it's happened here. It means that we get back to base and can prepare for going in there straight away. Sometimes you'll get awkward moments where you're kind of having to just sit around and wait for it to actually explode. But that was the reason for starting from the save game, so we had that kind of marathon safety, so we knew that it was going to happen at a good time, so we didn't just have to sit around. Though, admittedly, that does give more time for donations, but we don't want to hold up the line. So that was this taking the inventory safety there. So enter the base, save the inventory, leave the base, deconstruct the hatch. And now we come down this little tunnel here. Previously, we used to come here first and go all the way down here and then swim all the way back out again. But as you can see, it's quite a long way. So we don't want to do that. So at this point, we can just come down here and open up here. And one of the important things is that so-called storyline items or protected items. Oh, grab those cubes.
That's why I made a safety save.
Yeah, you missed a cube, I think. Yeah.
Did my game lock up?
Yeah, those cubes. Like we
goes.
don't save our inventory again, but we keep them regardless. Yeah. You might just have to hit escape again to, like, you might have the menu prompt open. Yeah. So try that again.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, that's what this is. Again, one of those kind of risky things that will show off for the marathon, but again, they are risky, so you have to be, they have to be careful, and we're playing it safe. But yeah, thankfully you don't lose those cubes when you do take the death, because they're considered protected items. A lot of the alien technology items are like that, and a few of the other things like some various collectibles, like the toys that we're going to be picking up later. So once again,
There we go.
we need 4 of these, and we've got just enough time to grab them. So there we go. Perfect. And yeah, we keep all of those, even though we didn't save our inventory again, which is nice. And we'll leave the 2 for the next runner. That's how it works, right? And now once again, we're just kind of zapping back another 1,200 meters or more back to our life pod. And we've got everything we need. No longer need the rebreather because we're no longer going to be going deeper than 100 meters, so we won't have the game shouting at us.
Yeah, and I learned to kind of turn that off early so that whenever you build the radiation suit, it auto-equips it for you. So me taking it off early actually ended up saving me a little bit in the future.
Yeah, saves an inventory swap, which is nice. Yeah, the radiation suit is, I mean, it's kind of a safety element. You technically don't need it in the survival run because you can just keep taking medkits in order to keep yourself alive in the Aurora in the radiation zone. But it is definitely like the safest thing to use, and that's the other element that you're waiting on for that explosion, because you actually only get the blueprint for the radiation suit after the Aurora actually explodes, which is very strange because if you go close to the Aurora before that point, you will take radiation damage, but the game doesn't think that you might need protection from it until the ship actually blows up. So that's kind of strange. But obviously in hardcore especially, that is crucial. Like you can kind of keep yourself alive with a ton of medkits to an extent, but you need like 6 of them, I think, and it's just not worth it at that point. You'd have to make extras, and you don't want to have to do that. Whereas at least in survival, it's a one-way trip. As astute people may have guessed, we kind of go in there and then we take a death walk to come all the way back out again, because otherwise we'd have to do a lot of extra swimming. Obviously can't do that in hardcore, so you'd have to keep yourself alive for a lot longer. And now we pick up the extra metal salvage. There's so many extra teeth that we didn't need, because again, they just kept picking them up and dropping them every time we were in the base. If you haven't had good teeth luck, it's at that point that you would get the rest that you need. For this sort of run, it's not uncommon that that's when you actually get the last ones that you need. We got really lucky early on, so we didn't need to worry about that. Instead, we just steal their metal.
Yeah, something weird happened with the batteries. I'm not exactly sure, so I'm gonna have to do a little bit of juggling later, but I don't think it's gonna be too bad. Try to pick up. Okay, good.
Speaking of not too bad, can I butt in for another moment here?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Because Gomerica came through with another $100 donation. Thank you so much for that. And this donation actually puts us only $11 away from our goal of $1,000 raised for Caldwell Children. It would be so great if you could just go ahead and met this during this run. We have about 20 minutes, or let's say 50 minutes left in this one. So that's about $1 per minute. I guess we can definitely do this, right, guys?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. I definitely recognize some of those names that came in. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
So now heading over to the Aurora, it's dark, but you can navigate by some underwater landmarks, kind of know where we're going. Picking up some extra metal salvage, we'll make a safety base to save inventory. Pretty common sort of tactic by now, as you may have seen. And then we'll head on inside. I'm gonna grab those toys.
Oh, that's where it is.
Oh, that's what happened with the batteries.
Yeah.
Well, you only need the laser cutter and the propulsion cannon once now, so you can scavenge those once you finish it.
Warning, emergency power only. Oxygen production offline.
Not used to doing all this juggling.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's finally the last bit I need for the builder.
That should do it. Yep. Don't need that anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, all of these tools that are so crucially important early on, you start to kind of phase them out, like Rivukis was saying, already dropped his knife earlier on to be able to bring some extra materials back from the mountain because we didn't need that. The habitat builder is now pretty much past its use-by date. The propulsion cannon, we had to make sure that we got the blueprint for and create that in time for this section, and we need it for exactly one thing, which is coming up in just a moment. Obviously, casually you'd use it for a lot more things. In some glitch categories, we use it to literally fly, which is quite fun. You can use some fun physics abuses with it. For this, it's just blast through the boxes and we're done with it. All of that investment in making that thing, and it's now obsolete. And this is the last thing we need the laser cutter for as well. Notice we're kind of feathering the trigger for the laser cutter. The way that it works is it doesn't just kind of tick up smoothly from 0 to 100%. It kind of goes in increments, and re-hitting the trigger actually jumps into the next increment immediately. You can also do a fun animation overlay where you can use the knife and swing it, and that actually progresses it faster as well. But that's technically a glitch because you're doing an animation overlay, whereas just kind of triggering it consecutively like that, technically not a glitch. So into room 1, normally we don't come in here, this is just for the incentive that people contributed to. We're picking up the arcade toy.
Speaking of incentives,
yep.
If you have a moment right here.
Yeah, I'll just finish this bit here. We're just grabbing the Aurora miniature, which is the other toy. Just wanted to highlight that we are taking those with us because that was the incentive that was met. So those come in there. Thankfully, we're going to that part of the ship anyway. And then we grab the blueprint for the rocket that we need to leave the planet, which is basically the most important thing of the game. And I was just going to highlight that thankfully the room codes there are always the same. If they were random, it would be a miserable run. And now we can dump all the things we don't need. And yep, as you were.
Alright, speaking of the most important thing, it's over 1,000 donated $11, and as I said before, this puts us at exactly $1,000 raised for Cauldron Children right here, which means not only have we met our marathon goal, but we still have more runs going, so we can go ahead and break that goal even further if you guys keep donating over the next couple hours where this marathon is still live. So even though we've raised our goal, guys, keep on donating. We have another incentive or a bit more even for the run after the run of this. So keep on going. We have awesome prizes for you to win. A little bit more of that later. But thank you so much so far that we were able to reach our goal. That is absolutely massive for us. And this is just a great run to watch too. So, you know, back to you already.
Thank you very much, and thanks to the donators. That's really good. Yeah, we're just going through some final crafting stages at this point here. So, just making everything we need. We no longer need the scanner, we can drop that as well. Again, just freeing up as much space as we can with things we no longer require. And this is where that base placement comes into it at the late game, because the water has to be deep enough to be able to drop the platform down. Even though the platform floats, go figure. Who knows? But either way, we need to have that in a very specific spot, and it's not very far away, which is really the crafting. We also have to make the Cyclops, the big giant submersible that everyone casually loves so much. It's completely useless in this run except for one specific aspect of it, and that's that it has its own fabricator with its own engine, and we need to make a shield generator for the cockpit of the rocket. So all of that investment in finding the fragments, getting all of the materials to make this big giant submersible, and we needed to give us a single item in the game. If there was any way that we could make that item in any other fashion, it would probably be worth doing differently. But we are unfortunately required to make this Cyclops right here. Even in a glitch run, there's no way that we have found to be able to circumvent that. The only theoretical way that you could do it is an item that you could find in a time capsule, which is a thing that they did in early access in this game, where you could leave a time capsule and then in someone else's save, it can appear randomly in the seafloor. But because it's completely random and you cannot rely on that, and they're never in the same place and don't have the same things, you're not allowed to do that in a speedrun, because that would be a completely unfair advantage if someone you'd just be endlessly resetting to try and find a time capsule. So there's the shield generator. Thank you for your service, Cyclops. You are now obsolete. And now we're almost finished building the rocket. And as you can see, we have very few things left on us now. Do a little quick victory lap here. Gonna dive down, and then dolphin dive.
I don't even think about that anymore. I just always do the dolphin dive. I don't know why.
Oh, why not?
Those are little toys.
Got our toys. Yep. Unfortunately, I don't think you get the chance to play with them because I don't think you're allowed to actually put them down inside the rocket. It's a bit rude.
Yeah, I think it's only inside a base.
Yeah, it is. It's a bit of a shame. So I think the arcade toy has a few little things that it does when you interact with it. There is also another little Easter egg toy in this, which it's too far out of the way to have included as an incentive or something for this run, but there is a little nod to Markiplier, who played this a lot in early access. There's a little doll that you can make. It's a fun bingo objective we have to craft like 5 of those dolls, and then you can interact with them and it does some of his catchphrases and stuff. So that's a fun little thing for another day.
I will say it's far off enough that I think it was already in 4th place in the speed run before I even knew that was a thing.
Yeah, it's not known by a great many people. The main reason I knew about it is just from the 100% category instead, because you have to scan it and have that blueprint to do 100%, or the all blueprints run.
Alright, as soon as I activate this chair, the run will be done.
Yep, this will be
There
timed.
it is.
Nicely done. GG's.
Whew.
Pretty smooth.
Thank you. Yeah. A little bit of nerves. Definitely constantly questioning if I forgot stuff.
Oh, always.
10, 9, 8.
Yeah, so much to have to remember on this run. It's definitely a very memory-heavy run, or just having a bit of extra screen real estate to keep some notes up is really cool. People have just had like physical printouts of notes, and they'll have checklists that they run through in order to have as a companion to do this run. It's certainly a good strategy when you're learning. And now we get the point in the cutscene where we get to see why we built a shield generator.
Yep. It gets a little bit loud. I try to turn the volume down a little bit for everyone.
There's the shield generator. That's the only reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all we've got for you guys. So thanks very much to donators and everything. Yeah, that's all from me. Rivukis.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody coming to watch and donating. Helping out children is. I don't have anybody personally in my life. I used to, but that's always been something that's important to me as well. So I really appreciate all the donations and all the help and everything. I also want to give a shout out to the hosts for setting all this up. I know that had to been just a ton of work, so I really, really appreciate that. And shout out again to AJ for helping to commentate. I was really nervous, and going through all this stuff is very nerve-wracking, so that really helped me out a lot so I could concentrate. So I really appreciate that to everyone. Thank you.
Right, well, thank you for this a run of Subnautica, Rivukis. Where can we actually find you on Twitch?
It's at rivukis.tv. Yeah, feel free to look me up.
All right. You know what you need to do, everybody. Go ahead and give that man a follow if you want to see more Subnautica and I guess also other games. For now, though, we are going to take a short break while we go into intermission and just, we need to cool down a little bit after this fantastic run and all these donations that came in. So everybody get up, catch something to drink and whatever else you need to do. We'll be back in just a few moments with a live slide run by, if I have to check this once more, give me a second, Circle Mind. So, go away for a moment, but don't go away too far because